Brunch, puppies, and a good ghost story. What could be better? There's a restaurant in Charleston, South Carolina that delivers all three, along with some of the best chicken and waffles you've ever tasted. So far, I've done a lot of pretty heavy ghost stories and creepy legends on this channel. But did you know that it's believed that up to 80% of paranormal activity that happens and ghosts that we encounter are actually animals? It's kind of a comfort in a way to think about the fact that maybe our fur babies are staying here with us and taking care of us even though they might have passed on. And that seems to be the case at Poogan's Porch, which is actually the namesake of the restaurant, a dog that belonged to the owners when the restaurant was originally built. Poogan used to be there as a greeter, and he was kept by the owners until his passing in 1979. Now, a little history on Poogan's Porch itself. It is a Grand Victorian home, and now it is a wonderful restaurant. It's located at 72 Queen Street in downtown Charleston, South Carolina. But it was originally built in 1888. And at that time, that sector of the city was strictly for residential. You actually weren't allowed to build businesses there. So Charleston's kind of a unique city because any business that gets built there has to go through a lot of sanctioning, and they're really careful about making sure that they preserve and maintain the history of the city because there's so much history there. Charleston is absolutely amazing, and I am so blessed to have gotten to spend so many summers there growing up. But that was no exception to the rule when it came to Poogan's Porch as well. And it took a while for the owners to finally get the city to allow them to build a restaurant there. And that was when they purchased that house in 76, I believe. I don't have the exact date, but sometime in the early 70s is when this was purchased. Now, there's not an exact answer as to how the restaurant owners acquired Poogan, and they have not confirmed one way or the other which story is true, but there's a couple versions that tend to get told on these little ghost tours that people go on. The first variation is a little bit sadder, but it still has a happy ending, which was that when 72 Queen Street was purchased by the owners who built the restaurant, the original owners left everything behind in such a hurry. They even left their poor dog behind, sitting on the porch waiting for them to come home. But the new owners were completely taken by this sweet dog that was so happy to greet them when they got there that they decided to keep him, name him Poogan, and then the entire restaurant was named for this dog. Now, another version of the story is that Poogan was a stray who would wander the neighborhood. He was going from porch to porch, always looking for scraps or somebody to give him his next meal. And when the construction workers were building Poogan's Porch up to be a restaurant, he would often stop there knowing that the construction workers would share their lunch with him. The owners thought that it was just the most precious thing, and the name came along saying that the porch was actually Poogan's, it wasn't theirs, because he always came to get lunch, and they decided to keep him as their pet. So regardless of which version you believe to be true, Poogan was a real dog. There are still people that remember when Poogan was the greeter at the restaurant. He's known in the city by lots of locals, and when he passed in 1979, he was really honestly very missed by the locals and by the people that frequented the restaurant. But the restaurant still stands, and the legacy of Poogan lives on. Now, if you go to the restaurant, it is very possible you may see the ghost of the little white dog Poogan waiting to greet you as you come to get your meal. But of course, Poogan's not the only ghost that haunts Poogan's Porch. Prior to this restaurant ever being considered, like I said, it was a residential area. And this house belonged to two sisters in the late 1800s. So the two women, their names were Zoe and Elizabeth. And Zoe was actually known for being kind of this town spinster. She never found love. She never got married. She and her sister were very, very close, and she suffered from severe social anxiety. She was a school teacher, but she would go to her classroom Monday through Friday, teach her kids, and immediately come home. She was never seen out and about. She never went on dates. It was just her and Elizabeth, and that was all that mattered to her, and that was fine. She tended to like to dress in all black. Like I said, she was very socially anxious. She didn't seek out suitors, and she was very okay with her comfortable at-home life. Her sister was a little bit less of a social pariah, but she still lived with her sister and took care of her. That is up until she passed away in 1945. And Zoe lost her mind without her sister. When her sister passed away, Zoe ended up wandering the streets barefoot in one of her long black dresses, screaming out her sister's name. "Elizabeth, where are you? Elizabeth, come home! Elizabeth, I need you!" The neighbors were, of course, distressed. I mean, you've got this lady who's lost her mind wandering the streets looking for her dead sister. So they had her locked away in St. Francis Hospital, and that is where she spent the duration of her living days. She's now buried in St. Lawrence Cemetery, which is also located in Charleston, but that is not where she has spent her days since passing. Zoe is actually probably the most frequently seen ghost at Poogan's Porch, and she seems to be looking for her sister. She's always wandering the halls. People will hear her calling out for Elizabeth still. They'll see a woman walk by in a black period dress, and they think, oh, well, this must be a customer or something, and then they realize that that didn't look right. What she was wearing didn't look right, or she resembles too closely to the portrait of Zoe that's still in the house today. And she's always constantly seen by people, even by the hotel that's across the street. Guests staying there have actually woken up and looked out the window and seen what they think is a customer or an employee who's been locked in to Poogan's Porch overnight. They see this older woman standing in the third floor looking out the window, and they think that she's stuck. So they call the police, and the police come. They look inside. There's no one there. And they're like, Zoe, you got us again. And everybody just kind of knows that Zoe is probably there looking for her sister, and probably will be for a very, very long time. So whether you are coming for lunch, dinner, or a good ghost story, Poogan's Porch is a really fun, awesome place to visit in Charleston, and I definitely highly recommend it. It's another place that's also featured on a lot of great ghost tours. There are a lot of really awesome ones. I know I've mentioned Bulldog in the past. There's also Holy City Tours. Really, really cool companies that know a lot of history and a lot more about the city than I do, so definitely check those out as well. But in the meantime, remember to stay woke, stay weird, and always look under the bed.